Hello, everybody, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Missing Lynx Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Dukowitz, beat reporter for Zone Coverage, covering the Lynx, Wolves, and now women's Gophers team. And today we got Noa Dalzell from SB Nation, Boston Celtics extraordinaire, last year covering the Connecticut Suns. This year, probably not as fun covering the Connecticut Sun. How's it going, Noa?
I've been great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So just real quick, last year I met you at the finals and you had kind of disclosed to me that you were becoming a Lynx fan as the finals were going on. Has that kind of it's okay to be a fan of teams. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Have you kind of kept that fandom coming into this season at all, or have you been more like objectively just covering the whole league?
Yeah, I mean, I try my best to be as objective as possible because I do have a media vote and I want to be responsible with it. And honestly, like, I think with the covering an entire league is a very different experience. I cover the Celtics as a beat writer, and then the WNBA, I cover the whole league. And obviously the two leagues are different, but honestly, the biggest transition is changing the hat from like looking at everything through the lens of one team versus an entire league. I really like the Lynx. I like their personalities. I think what I saw last spring or this fall when I was covering the finals. And also I covered the series before that, the Sun versus the Lynx. So I had a couple of weeks where I was just around the Lynx all the time after having never really been around them before. And I thought to myself, this is one of the most electric teams I've ever been around. And yet nobody really knows anybody on this roster. Like the national profile of the players were very low. And it's funny because here we are less than a year later. And because of the stud buds and everything that's happened with Courtney Williams and Atisha Heidemann, like I think a lot of people actually do know the Lynx personalities now. Maybe not every single player, but the average person that follows the WNBA has a very different sense about this team than they did last year. So I honestly fell in love with their personalities, but I think they're a really fun team to watch as well. But there are things I like about all the teams. And I think that's the difference. Like I grew up a huge Celtics fan and I didn't grow up a fan of any WNBA team. So it does kind of change the way I kind of pull, and there's no team in Boston. So I kind of try to, I root for different teams in different ways, I think.
And you were like one of the first like writers last year to really kind of paint out the Courtney's dad picture, which he is now a staple at Lynx games. Every fourth quarter, he starts the wave. He is wearing Courtney's daddy's QR coded jerseys at every game. What was it like kind of getting to know them last year throughout the playoffs?
Yeah, it's funny. So I always love talking to parents. I did a big series where I interviewed a bunch of moms of Celtics players this year. Like that's like something I really enjoy. But honestly, Courtney's dad was maybe the first person that I really kind of made me start going into that as a journalistic pursuit, because when I was covering the semifinals between the Sun and the Lynx last year, I noticed that he was literally the number one fan in Connecticut. And obviously he was wearing a Lynx jersey, but he was because she was previously on the Sun, a lot of the fans knew him. And even though they were rooting for the Sun, they were still very nice to him. And we were rooting for Courtney too. And so I'd seen him around. I'd seen how engaged he was, also how similar his mannerisms are to Courtney's is pretty wild. Yeah. And then when I was in the finals, I asked him hey, do you have a few minutes to chat? It was actually before game 5 of the semifinals. And I think that's not normally when I would ask a parent for an interview, because it's the game's about to start. It's stressful, but something about his vibe, I was I feel like he'll be down to talk. And it was one of my favorite interviews that I've ever had as a basketball reporter. He was so cool and he was so friendly and warm and funny. And I think everybody knows that about him now. He's podcasting, he's on TikTok, he has a huge personality. But I always felt I felt in that moment, this is a celebrity in the making kind of. And so is she. So it's cool to see how much has changed since September when we had those conversations.
It is really wild. And Courtney's dad, my favorite memory of him was in the finals last year. He sat next to Mike Conley and was doing the electric slide with Mike Conley off to the side behind the Lynx players after they beat the Liberty. I think it was in game 4, maybe.
Yeah.
Game 4. And I remember the next day going to Wolves training camp and talking to Mike about it. And he was just yeah, Courtney's dad is the best, the best person I've ever been around. Mike lost his voice. Courtney's dad, was making him drink, just awesome, Mike Conley story of if Mike Conley says you're the best, you're probably legitimately one of the best people. Now, Noah, I'm not going to ask you to like disclose your votes or anything like that because you do have a vote, and that would be. I mean, I'm sure Lynx fans will sleuth and figure out who's going to vote for
I'll
AJ.
be sharing all of my votes publicly with like
Then that's
explanations for all of them.
perfect.
Yeah.
Then Lynx fans, you can like at Noah as soon as the votes come out. But how impressed have you been with Fee this year? I mean, she has been. I mean, she's been unbelievable. Like a plus 60 true shooting percentage. She's comes back last game and is literally just as efficient as when she left. 11 of 16, 32 points, like an 80% true shooting. Her net rating in her first game back was a plus 40. Like, just what can you say about Fee being an outsider?
It's honestly incredible to watch. And I think Fee is one of those players that is rightfully gaining some national recognition, but probably should have already had it for quite a while now, because not just is she great, like she scores and she rebounds and she defends, but she just is such a smooth game. Like, she's so fun to watch. Sometimes like my dad is kind of getting more into the WNBA, but he played professional basketball. He loves the NBA. And whenever he watches her, he's like, why is she not like the most famous, like most popular player in the league? Like, because when he watches her, he's like, she's so incredible. And I think, maybe it's her personality. She's a little bit more, I don't want to say quiet, but I feel like she has a little bit of that like Tim Duncan like vibe sometimes. And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just, I think post players in general, the WNBA sometimes get overlooked a little bit because people can kind of compare everything to like the male perspective, and guards can emulate it a little bit better. But yeah, I think she's the MVP. I mean, I haven't like picked my vote definitively. And obviously Asia Wilson has put together an incredible last 3 weeks here, but just looking at the season as a whole, I think it's hard to make a case for somebody other than her. You could, though. That's the challenging thing. The other thing that's kind of fascinating is, I've been doing actually all morning. I've been looking at defensive analytics because I'm starting to think about like my all defense team, because I find that to be just the most difficult thing to cast a vote on, because you're comparing guards and bigs. And I didn't have Fee, like, just from watching the season. I was like, okay, she's like the MVP, but I don't think she's going to be defensive player of the year. But honestly, like, that's the other thing that I've been kind of mulling over, is I feel like defensively, I started rewatching some games and I was looking through the advanced analytics, and she's probably one of the like top 2 or 3 front runners for defensive player of the year too. So to be able to be so efficient on the offensive end, anchor things defensively, and then their record with her is ridiculous. Like, I don't know. I think she's just having an all-time season. And it doesn't surprise me because she was great at Unrivaled. She was great in the finals. But it's just one thing after the other. And I think she's really making her name known.
It's wild to me, like, how much responsibility she has on this team. But then it's also the thing I appreciate most about her is there's a lot of, like, if you talk to like NBA players or a lot of WNBA players, they kind of lie to you about like, I didn't know what my stats were, or like, I don't know what the offense is being run through and stuff like that. Like, Fee, I really legitimately don't think has any clue what she's doing during a game. Like, she's on numerous occasions, it's just been like, I black out during games and just kind of like instincts take over and I do what I'm supposed to do. Like, Cheryl talks about how she has to like kind of yell at Fee in timeouts to get her more involved in the offense. Yet this is like the leading scorer in the WNBA, putting up historic like advanced numbers. And you're right, on defense, she's been incredible. I think Alana Smith is probably tasked with more of like the defensive like load, just because the Lynx, the way they run their defense, everything kind of funnels into Lan, and that allows Fee to do more free safety stuff and get more like weak side blocks and all of that. But like, it is just wild how important she is to this team. I think the other thing I'd love to get your thoughts on is just, Fee does have like a really elegant game, is how I describe it. Like, she has the up and under fadeaways. She's added the 3-point shot. I mean, what do you see from her, like, when you're looking around for other teams in the league? And I know you just did a column on like who's like the likeliest to win a championship. What do you think the answer is to slowing Fee down?
I don't know that there's really an answer. I mean, I think every year there's a couple players that are just are playing at a level that you just hope for the best. Like, one of my favorite quotes is Kevin Durant once said, like, when I'm missing shots, it's not about the defense. It's like, I'm just missing the shots, and I think about that a lot when I watch players like Nafisa, because it really doesn't. I mean, you go back to like last year in the finals, right? She's going up against Brianna Stewart, Jonquel Jones. Like they had such a formidable front court, and it really didn't matter. Like she didn't look sped up, she didn't look rushed. This is the the WNBA finals, and the Liberty were great, and they had so many things to throw at her, and it's like she looked so relaxed. And so, yeah, I don't know that there's much you can do. I mean, obviously, like there's going to be other great teams that can contend for a title. I don't think it's like a shoe-in that they're going to win. That's the nature of basketball, but they're definitely my favorites. And it's a credit to the team for how they were able to hold their own without her. But I think right away when she came back, it's like, okay, but they are a lot better when she's here, even if they were able to, and I know in the MVP conversation, like you almost get penalized when the team keeps winning without you. Like, had they gone on a 5-game losing streak without Fee, she'd have this award in the bag. And is that fair? I don't know. Like, it's kind of hard to kind of work through those narratives. But yeah, it's a little, she's kind of unstoppable right now. That's just what we've seen.
It's always weird how there's like formative moments in players, right? And like she loses the finals. The Lynx were very candid about them feeling that finals was stolen or that officiating had something to do with it. And I'll never forget, and I say this a lot, so to people that are listening to the podcast, I'm sorry, but like post finals, like the media exit interviews, someone asked her, what did you learn from this finals experience? And Fee, without missing a beat, was to be up by enough for the refs not to matter. And that has been kind of their entire philosophy this year, is to be so dominant that the refs aren't going to matter, that other teams aren't going to matter. And that's been Fee. I mean, she said she wants to retire Diana Taurasi, and then she went out and did it the next game. I mean, that's just what we've gotten to learn. Defensive player of the year, you said you were digging into the metrics. I'd love to get your thoughts just on Alana Smith too.
Yeah, she's probably my front runner because, like you said, I think from watching, she shoulders more of the load. The advanced analytics actually favor Fee in a lot of different metrics that I've been looking at, like on-off numbers and things like that. But I think just the load that she's shouldered has been kind of ridiculous. And she's one of those players that will probably never get her fair share because she doesn't stuff the stat sheet, like even rebounding, right? Like she doesn't rebound a ton, but there's a reason for that, right? It's the kind of the role that she plays within the system, or closeouts, everything. So I don't know. I'm a huge fan of hers. She's another player that like when I watched her closely in the playoffs last year, and I was kind of like, wow, like she's really not one of the front court players we think of when you think about who are among the WNBA's elites. Obviously, she's very tough. We saw that with her back injury and everything. But yeah, I think if you start digging through the numbers, combined with watching her and kind of thinking about the load that she carries, she is one of the people that I think will definitely be first team all defense. First team all defense, but also it is probably at this point, like if I have to pick right in the second, she's probably my defensive player of the year. But I have a lot of work I need to do kind of before solidifying that. The other thing is I do like, and I know this is not necessarily the media voting, like there's so many different things to consider, like voter fatigue and narratives. And you can say like, I'm just going to pick the best or the thing, statistically like the best accurate, but there's always going to be other things. I think if Fee is the MVP, like it would make sense in my head, like Fee's MVP, Alana Smith is the defensive player of the year. The Lynx have been so much better than every other team that doesn't seem wrong to me to have those two awards go to Minnesota players. So that's kind of like where I'm leaning right now.
How impressive is it that she's so impactful? And I mean, she is like legitimately undersized, like 6'1", barely 6'2". I know they list her at 6'2", but like, I don't know if I buy that. I mean, just how impressive is her size being able to be this impactful?
It's pretty wild. And actually I remember like walking past her at a finals game last year, and I'm 5'11". And so there are a lot of WNBA players that I'm like around their height, and I walked past her, and then I think I walked past like Jonquel Jones like a few minutes later, and I was like basically eye level with Alana. And when I was standing next to Jonquel Jones, I felt like there was 4 feet in between us. Like obviously not really, but like it's a sizable difference, just not just her height, but her size in general.
Yeah.
And so like because of kind of being able to put myself in the equation, it almost like made it more ridiculous, just like how much she was holding her own. Obviously, Jonquel Jones had an incredible WNBA finals. But yeah, I think it's just a testament to her toughness, to her savvy. Like she kind of just makes up for it, almost to the point where I don't even like. Obviously, yes, she would be better off if she had a few more inches, but it doesn't really feel like she's playing with any limitations out there. She feels like she has totally maxed out on what a player in her role can do. And she's just a perfect fit for this team. What I love about this Minnesota team, and I think this is what I really kind of fell in love with them, is that it's not like they went out and said, let's get all the best available all-stars and sign them. Obviously, they have 3 all-stars this year, which is well deserved. But it was really more about like finding the missing pieces and have stars in their role. And I think about it like I covered the Celtics when they won the championship, and yes, they had a bunch of all-stars, but you have teams like the Phoenix Suns all the time. Like you see stars come together, or the Phoenix Mercury for last year for that to that effect, and it doesn't always work. And so I think it's pretty incredible to actually see like the way the pieces have meshed for this team, and she's a perfect example of that.
Isabella says Lan is listed at 6'4". I promise you she's not 6'4", even if she's listed
at 6'4". Is she really?
That's wild if she's listed at 6'4". It's and this is Cheryl.
She really is listed at 6'4". That's wild.
Isn't that wild? I mean, they have Rob Dillingham at 6'1", and he might be my height, so that's not ideal. Anyways, that's kind of the most fun part with this team. And I got to talk to Cheryl after the last game over the Fever, and she had kind of said like that's why a lot of Lynx fans are really bonding to this team, is because this team is uniquely vulnerable. Like Lan will talk about how difficult it was to move from Australia to Minnesota, or from Australia to play at Stanford, and how difficult it is to be like a foreign college student. Like Court will talk about growing up in the WNBA. They are very outspoken on like social justice and reproductive health. And then, the other thing is a lot of coaches talk about chemistry, and Cheryl talks about it quite a bit, that this team is a really connected group. But the word that always comes up with them is friendship. And like, that might just kind of sound hokey and tacky, but like they legitimately are friends outside of playing. Like they all hang out. We
see it.
Yeah. Like
a lot of it is screamed to us. Yeah.
The stud buds are one thing, but like if you're just in Northeast Minneapolis going to Target, you'll run into like Bridget and Lan at the checkout line. Like they legitimately, even like going on routine errands, do it together. And I don't think I've ever been around a team that has that much just connectiveness off the court, because they all live their own lives. I don't know about you, Noah.
Yeah, it is. Obviously you're around this team way more than me, but I did kind of get that sense in the finals. And I think you get like, it becomes a very underrated thing, because at the end of the day, like there are going to be multiple teams that have enough talent to win the finals. Like it's not just going to be Minnesota. The Aces right now have been great. Like the Liberty on paper should have already won the WNBA title after, their acquisitions, and, they have just so much talent on that roster. And so I think it does come down to like trust and communication, and being able to be happy for one another. And like, even seeing like Courtney Williams be benched down the stretch of a game and like on her feet cheering and doesn't care at all. Like you can't take that stuff for granted. Like she's an all-star point guard, like, that sort of thing. So I think there is a level of like being happy for one another that has a big long-term impact on winning as well. And right now, like I never want to say like one team is inevitable, but this team does feel pretty inevitable to me. Like I know it's going to be a long journey to winning a title, but honestly, like sitting in that press conference room moments after they lost Game 5 last year, I thought to myself, like, this is the beginning of a story. Like this does not feel like the end of a story for this team. This feels like the beginning of a story that they will be back next year and they will rectify this. It just felt that way, just from the way they were talking, the way everything had gone down. And I feel that way. I feel even more strongly about that now.
It's the Lynx talk about it a lot, of like the parallels between the 2016 Lynx team that got kind of robbed by a shot clock violation against the Sparks, and then they came out and just kind of broke the league in 2017. Internally, they talk a lot about like that 2016 year being like the catalyst for 2017, and they have like Waylon and Brunson on the team from that team,
right?
Simone Augustus is around the team constantly. Sylvia Fowles shows up at games pretty like this. That entire like main core is pretty connected with this Lynx team. The comparison I always go to, because I wasn't watching the WNBA as much at that time, is
Can I guess?
the Spurs Heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about that literally every time. I'm trying to like not bring up the NBA after every, because I view everything like NBA, WNBA, and I know that's not always the audience, but I always think that like it feels the exact same.
And it's to the point even where like I remember talking to some of the like TV people that were in New York for that game 5, and they were like putting plastic on the cameras to celebrate champagne for the Lynx, and then had to like take all the plastic off their cameras after New York won it. And like that's the parallel that just keeps coming up of Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. That's a pretty good comp for Fee, Court, and K-Mac, and they're just kind of wrecking the league, which I was going to bring up Court and her short-term memory, but I feel like we've talked about Court enough. Let's pivot and just what are, again, you have a vote. Cheryl Reeve, I think, is the definition of voter fatigue for Coach of the Year. But what do you think of Cheryl's coaching job this year?
I mean, it's incredible. It's like, it's so hard when you have a team that has been head and shoulders the best team in the league, and so consistently, so even with injuries and different things, you start to wonder, like, who gets the credit for that? Is that the, whoever put that team together? Like, is it just on paper, this is the winning roster? Like, maybe, but I think there are a lot of winning rosters in theory that don't actually mesh. Is it Nafisa's leadership, and even when she's out, like they're so used to how they're playing? Is it, Jessica Shepard, who I think like don't take for granted like what she was able to do in Nafisa's absence? Like there's a lot of layers to their success. But probably if I had to pick one as an outsider, like it's probably Cheryl. And so that's why like when you're thinking about Coach of the Year, and this is another award that I've really been mulling over, like you want to give it to the coach that overachieved, that did the most with very little. Like even a Carl Smesko, like I didn't have the dream being the second best team in the league right now, and they are. Like that's a strong case, right? And they're not like they're not so dissimilar from last year's roster, but they're so much better. I mean, Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner have helped, but I give a lot of credit to him. Or Natalie Nakase, like I thought that team was absolutely doomed when the season started after the draft and everything. And like like many media members have had to apologize for the construction of that roster, but how much of it is the construction? How much of it is her? Like, I don't know. Cheryl, if I had to say, like, who's the best coach in the league right now? I think it's her. Does that mean that she's going to win the award? Probably not, because like you said, I think she could probably win it every year, and she won't. It's a little bit like Eric Spoelstra in Miami, who I think has never won the award. And so how do you?
I don't think he has.
Yeah, and so, but it's just clear, like everybody's bought in. You see Dejanay Carrington, she comes over to Minnesota, and it's like she's a different player. She's playing with a different air about her. Like she obviously respects Cheryl and trusts her, and is being utilized properly right away. So yeah, she seems incredible for me, but I have a hard time. Like I'm not in the locker room. I don't know if she deserves all the credit or 50% of it, or how exactly to kind of think through all of that.
It's weird with Cheryl because she's also like the GM, president of basketball operations. So like
exactly.
She designs the team and then she coaches it. And like she does have like an all-world bench. Like Eric Thibault last year coached the Mystics. Lindsay Whalen coached the Gophers for years, and I mean she's a Hall of Famer. And then Rebecca Brunson's been on her staff for years, and she is as well a Hall of Famer. So she does have help, but I think the thing I've been most impressed with Cheryl is during the original Lynx dynasty and kind of the years that followed it, Cheryl had this rap of really just being like a hard-nosed kind of, Cheryl, if you're listening, or Carly, if you're listening, I apologize, but kind of an asshole. And not just like, holding your players accountable, but she was really outspoken. She was really passionate. She would call players out publicly. And I think what's been really cool to watch is this season, whether it's just more cameras around her so more people can see like her true personality, or whether it's her realizing that this group needs someone that's a little lighter, especially like in front of media. She's been hilarious. Like she's stand-up comedian level funny. She goes completely out of her way to like compliment her players. She'll still call them out, like Courtney after the Atlanta game, airballing a floater and then juggling the inbounds pass. Like Cheryl went out and said like she missed laying on the roll and essentially, said she needs to do better. But then 2 games later, she'll talk about like how great her relationship is with Courtney, that they can be so honest and Courtney trusts her and buys in. And that's allowed Cheryl to like grow as a person. Cheryl's out there wearing a pink Stud Buds t-shirt during the game. Like it's been so cool to see her almost like public persona evolve over the last 18 months as well. Cause she's probably my favorite person I've ever gotten to talk to, like across NBA, WNBA, personal life. Like she's just a fascinating person. Did you get a chance to spend any time talking to her during the finals?
Yeah, not super intimately, like more in press conferences, but I've been following her for a long time, and I think I totally resonate with kind of what you're saying. Sometimes I wonder when like I do think she's chilled out a little, and I think sometimes it's just like where we are as a society around coaching and sports today. Like I think a lot of coaches that have been coaching for a long time. But like you said, like she still has that edge and she still has that ability to just say things as they are. And the biggest thing, this is what I always say, like when it's time to evaluate coaches, which to date, I haven't had a vote to do so, but obviously as a media member, like that's always a topic you're discussing around whether the coach you're covering is good or if they're to blame for late game execution and all of that. The biggest thing I point to always is, are the players bought in? What are the players saying? Because they're the ones that are being coached. And obviously I think Courtney Williams thinks she's the greatest player in the world. You know what I mean? Like she has a big ego. She said she was going to win that rival one-on-one tournament, like stuff like that. And I think Fee thinks that she's the MVP. And I think Kayla McBride is, if I were Kayla McBride, I would think I'm the best shooting guard in the WNBA. Like there's so many different things, so many different egos and personalities and things to manage and really great players. Like I was thinking about this with Jessica Shepard. Like she was so good when Fee was out and now she comes out, Fee comes back and she gets 10 minutes. Like that's a hard thing to have to accept that, like, on another team, maybe you would be putting that 20-point triple-double every once in a while, and you're not going to do that in Minnesota. And so a lot of people are making sacrifices. Dejanay Carrington's coming off the bench now. I think she seems to be completely fine with it. So I always point to, like, what are we hearing from the players? And they seem 100% bought in and motivated to play under Cheryl Reeve, and that's the biggest testament that a coach could receive.
Yeah, Jessica Shepard gets the second triple-double in Lynx history, and then the next game plays 9.5 minutes. I mean, that is buy-in. I mean, she was up on the bench cheering as hard as anybody, despite, I mean, I remember we asked her after the game, like, do you feel like you're going to get more minutes? And she was just kind of like, I mean, Fee plays on this team, so probably not.
Right.
Which, I mean, what do you do? So you've mentioned it a couple times. Lynx right now are your kind of front runners for the finals. I feel pretty similar with that. But what do you think, if you had to pick something that would be a weakness for the Lynx, where would you put that weakness at?
That's a great question that I should probably have an answer to. And I don't off the top of my head, which is a testament to their consistency.
I'll just start with mine while you're thinking.
Because they've been great defensively and offensively. That's the interesting thing. I'm curious.
It's frustrating. I mean, they're the best offensive team in the league, the best defensive team in the league. They have the highest assist percentage, the best assist to turnover ratio.
Right.
They have 8 starters on their team. If there is a weakness, I think as of this weekend, they were like 5th in rebounding. So size does give them a challenge, but also they're able to kind of pick apart size on the other end. Honestly, I've been really struggling, and not just as like a home media person, which I feel like when you say a team doesn't really have a weakness, you get pegged as like being a homer a lot. But even when I dug into their analytics, like they don't have a weakness.
Their analytics don't indicate any.
Yeah, which is wild.
I think I have mine, but I want to preface it by saying that my favorite player in the WNBA is Courtney Williams. Like that's maybe I shouldn't have a favorite, but I do, and anybody that knows me, I just love her game. I love the way she put all the energy and kind of charisma around it as well. I actually think that despite the fact that she's having a great season and she's a great player, obviously an all-star, very deserving, she is their X factor in a way that could be a weakness a little bit. Like one of the things that I do think kind of gets glossed over is that she had an abysmal game 5 last year in the finals. Like, everybody talks about the free throw and about the calls and down the stretch, everything that went wrong in overtime. But like, I think, if she has a normal game, they're not in that position. And that's not to put the blame on her, but she is the kind of player that, can have those kinds of games. Everybody can, but I feel like she's a little bit more hot and cold than most. And so that to me, I could see biting them like in a big moment. I do trust her. Like I think she's very clutch, and she obviously has hit very many clutch shots. But like you said the other night, where she had some late game mishaps, like that is kind of part of the Courtney Williams experience.
Yep.
And over a 7-game series, I think that she's a huge positive. But if there is if it all goes wrong, and I'm like, where did they go wrong? I was sure the Minnesota Lynx were going to win the series. Obviously, health is number one. Like if somebody important goes down, that'll be the reason. But assuming that they stay healthy, knock on wood, I think she struggles at some point. Like that is probably how they find out where they are. So I don't know if it's exclusive to her. Like Sabrina had some terrible games in the finals as well. Like I think being a guard in the WNBA is a very hard thing to be really, really consistent. But just I've seen her highs and her lows, and there's such a big gap in between those, even in a 1-week span. That just so she matters so much, and that's a little bit risky for Minnesota.
I'm laughing a little bit because Minnesota fans are so in tune with the Courtney Williams experience, where she will go 0 for 7 in the first quarter and get benched, and then she'll go 4 for 4 in the second half, have 7 assists, no turnovers, and win the game. Likewise, she will have 14 points in the first 8 minutes, and then she will go 0 for the rest of the game. And there's no rhyme or reason. Courtney, Cheryl has called her Dory from Finding Nemo all season because she just has no there is no long-term memory. Every shot she takes, she thinks is going to go in. Every pass she throws, she thinks is going to be perfect. And game to game, minute to minute, that does kind of kill the team at times. Terry in the chat actually said what I was going to say back is this year T has been completely offsetting those moments, and the relationship Courtney and Natisha Heidemann have had. I mean, Cheryl just benches Courtney now. If Courtney's having one of those first quarters or first halves, she's going to finish the game with 20 minutes, and T is going to play 20, which I think last year T, whether it was just not having the trust of Cheryl, whether it was kind of getting used to the new Lynx system, because Cheryl puts so much on her point guards. She did have kind of a down season, but this year, I mean, again, I don't want you to vote for all Lynx players, but she's making a case for 6th player of the year as well.
Yeah. No, she is. And honestly, that's the award that there isn't a clear front runner for. There's probably 4 or 5 good candidates, but there's not a clear one. So she's in the mix for sure. She'll probably get a vote. I think I can vote for 3 players. But yeah, that's a great point by Terry. That actually that has been a noticeable improvement, is that they don't have to sync. If she's sinking, they don't have to sync with her. There is a very viable alternative. And I think they have depth across the board. It's not just her. So, if Fee has to miss a game in the playoffs because she re-sprains that ankle, I do feel pretty good about Jessica Shepard's ability to slot in more so than I would have last year. So I think there's a couple of different dynamics on this roster that kind of further strengthens the case for why they are such a front runner right now, is that it's not they can survive somebody struggling for a game or two or missing a game or two to a reasonable extent.
It's been kind of obnoxious how, last season they had Maisha Hines-Allen. I don't know if she plays on this team. Same with Chechi Zanalazini had played big minutes. I don't know if she would get minutes on this team. Dejanay is such an upgrade over Chechi. I think Jess has been such an upgrade over Mai. It's just kind of remarkable how good they are, for lack of a better word, just how good this team is. Noah, I did want to pivot over to the CBA though. You're more of a national WNBA writer. Obviously, salary structure, percentage of the revenue sharing is probably the biggest change and biggest sticking point for the league and the players to work out. But if you were in those conversations, what would be something else you would be trying to advocate for changing in the WNBA?
Yeah, I think you can't have 12 players on a roster anymore.
Yes.
It's pretty ridiculous. Like at a certain point, I'm always on the WNBA transaction site because I'm always, I write up like when there's news that breaks related to the league. And sometimes I'm like, there shouldn't be players getting waived and signed every day in the middle of the season. Like at a certain point, it's not fair to the athletes. It's not fair for the teams. And there's no reason why 12 is the cap. You don't have two ways like in the NBA. You don't have a G League team. So players are coming in that haven't been with your organization at all season. Now they're expected to contribute to winning. And it's remarkable how many times they are able to do so. Like I think Ari McDonald is one of the incredible stories of the WNBA this season. But there's no reason for that. And there's no reason why so many good players should be out of the league. Like why was Ari McDonald not in the WNBA
Yes.
a month before she signed with the Fever? Like that's ridiculous. And that is an oversight. Like she should have been on a roster, but there are a bunch of those cases. And it's not fair to those players that are right on the fringe because they are WNBA players. Veronica Burden was a WNBA player last year. She should not have been waived by the Dallas Wings, and she's showing now that she's a borderline all-star. So that's the biggest thing I want to change. I want to see 14, 15 players on a roster so that when there are injuries, you can just go down to the other players that have been with the team all season and not have to have somebody fly in for a 7-day contract. Then they get waived, they go back home. They're unable to like have a consistent livelihood during this time. Like it's just not sustainable. And it's like strictly from like a professionalism standpoint, it kind of looks bad on the league. Like when you're watching players shuffling in and out like that, like is there not a 13th spot on the bench? Like I don't understand why it has to be. And I understand obviously it's a financial thing, but with you're seeing how many, these organizations are valued at $400 million. Like you can have a 13th player making a minimum contract. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. So from a player development standpoint, I think it'll really benefit the players. It'll benefit the product. Like injuries are a part of the game. Like if you start with 12, at one point you're going to have 8 players, and it just doesn't make sense to have players signed 6-7-day contracts in a given season. And there are some players that have had like Haley Jones. Like there have been some examples of players that have just had ridiculous seasons where all year they're getting 7-day contract waived, and it doesn't. Yeah, there's no need for it, and it's something that I think has been a little bit discussed, but I would like to see it become a bigger priority because you can continue adding teams, but it's not going to go away. You can have 25 WNBA teams. If there's a 12-player limit, this is going to continue because injuries are part of the game, and then you have Satu Sabali complaining about back-to-backs and getting killed for it, but it's different to play back-to-backs when you don't have the roster flexibility that you see in the NBA.
Oh, 100%. Completely agree with you. It's the Lynx, I feel like, are pretty savvy with it. Cam Taylor is currently on her 3rd 7-day contract with the Lynx, and she has been in training camp with the Lynx the last 2 years. So I think the Lynx are a little more savvy of just, let's have some players come into training camp, learn the system, and then we'll just save their number in our phone so we can call them if we need to. But I mean, 44 games this year, I would assume that that's going to continue to grow. And when you're down to, I mean, the Lynx played the Sparks this season. I can't remember who it was on the Sparks, but they came in and didn't even have their name on their jersey yet because they flew in to play in Minneapolis that game. It's obnoxious. Jude asks, can you have the rosters and the 2 teams join? I'd love to get your thoughts on that. I mean, with the 2 expansion teams, and if they expand rosters to 15, that's going to be quick math, 45, like 50, 60 more players joining the league. Do you think that's possible from like a talent depth standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you see is that so often these players that are on 7-day contracts come in and sometimes they feel like they're immediately in the rotation / better than some of the existing players. Like Chloe Bibby is a good example of somebody that like she signs with the Fever, and right away Fever fans are like, wait a second, like she's really good. Like why would she not? Like I think there's a lot of those examples. And then if you're going to add the 60, 70 players, you are going to get to a point where some of those players are less ready to contribute and impact winning on a WNBA team. And that's totally fine, right? Like that's part of player development. Like I don't actually like when all the 7-day players come in and right away they're like very good, because I'm like, it kind of makes me uneasy. Like that should not be the case. I want if you're a 7-day player, you should look like you're a 7-day player. Like when a 2-way player goes in and plays in an NBA game, like there's usually a little bit of a talent gap, and you can see why they are a 2-way player. And so as the league grows and there are more opportunities, some of those end of bench players will look like, okay, they're maybe on the border of being a WNBA player or not. And if they don't make it, then they go overseas, they go do something else, and somebody else gets that opportunity. But Right now, I think there's a lot of players that just don't have, just don't get the chance. And I think it'll be a good thing for a college standpoint because, these college teams have massive fan bases, college players have massive fan bases, and then they go and they watch, their favorite player go to the W and get waived after being selected 15th overall. Like, I was at WNBA draft night. A lot of the girls that were selected that night were out of the league a month later. And it's like, what's the point, right? What's the point of having a draft with 36 players and then not having all of those players at least get a season on a roster, and just see if they even can be a sponge and absorb everything and find a way to be impactful later on. So I think there's definitely more than enough talent. I just whether they can make it sustainable from a revenue standpoint.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here because we're running a little short on your time and you've already given me like 40 minutes. So I appreciate you. But Connecticut going to Boston seemed like it was almost a surefire thing. Now it seems like there's a lot of, sticks being shoved in the wheels, and that might not be as surefire. But what have you been hearing on the likelihood that Boston's going to get a WNBA team? And what's kind of going on with Connecticut? Because like I said, a month ago, I thought for sure, like, oh, this makes sense. Just move Connecticut to Boston. Yes, people have to take a train ride a little bit further, but now it doesn't seem as certain.
Yeah, this is obviously a case I've been monitoring closely because I live in Boston and I plan to live in Boston, and I would love to have a home base team that I can follow the league through. But that initial report that came from the Boston Globe was, the Tribe agreed to sell the team to Steve Pagliuca, who's been a minority owner for the Celtics, who has been a great owner, very beloved in Boston, seemed to make a lot of sense. He lost the bidding war for the Boston Celtics, so he picks up a Boston WNBA team, $325 million, $100 million practice facility, like it all added up. And I think, you see pretty much right away that the league does not want that. They put out a statement hours after that Boston Globe article. Since then, there's been a lot of reporting indicating that the league prefers the Connecticut Sun to be sold to a Houston-based group, which to me, it's like, if that's not who the Tribe picked, like, I don't really think the league should be able to just handpick like those kinds of relocation decisions. At the end of the day, the Tribe has been the ownership group for the Sun for a long time, before it was popular, before it was profitable, before every NBA owner wanted a WNBA team. And I do sense that there's a little bit of a trend now where the league is prioritizing owners who own an NBA team to own a WNBA team as well. And I get it because it makes things easier from a management standpoint. Like, the leagues are intertwined. But even like there's been reporting like the league prefers Bill Chisholm, the new Celtics owner, to own the Boston WNBA team, not Steve Pagliuca. Like, I don't think the league should be able to determine that. I think that if the Tribe sold to, Steve Pagliuca, like that's what they decided. And so I get it. There's a lot of internal politics. I get it that it's, at the end of the day, it's like Adam Silver, and it's like these decisions are not being made in a vacuum. But at the same time, I don't think that it's right for there not to be a WNBA team in New England until 2033, and for the Connecticut fans that have been rooting for their team to now have to decide if they're going to become Houston fans. Like, they're not. It's not the New England team anymore. Versus if it was in Boston and they play some games in, they could play a couple of games in Connecticut and Providence. It could be the New England team. They could hold on to the indigenous like roots and traditions of that franchise. Like, it just doesn't really make sense to me. So I hope that the league, ends up not kind of dictating that it has to be sold to Houston. And I would love to see a Houston WNBA team, don't get me wrong, but I think this feels like a forced path. And so I'm sure we'll get more information, but that's what I've been hearing so far, is that I think people are getting a little bit discouraged here. And Hartford is also a good bid. Like, if they have the money and the Tribe agrees to sell to the Hartford group, like, okay, great. It's not the media market that I would pick, but that seems like more just to me than forcing a sale to Houston.
It's wild that like only in the WNBA, right? Like, no other sport would the league force a sale to a different ownership group. I mean, it's kind of wild that it makes all the sense in the world for it to be Boston. It makes all the sense in the world to just rename them the New England Sun and just, like you said, play a couple games in Connecticut, play the rest of them in Boston, and just roll with it. But the WNBA just seems to have this way of getting in their own way at times, which I'm not a national reporter. I can just speak from the Lynx side, and the Lynx are pretty vocal about even like scheduling stuff where they don't play the Liberty until the end of July, or they don't play the Fever until August. And it's just kind of like, wouldn't you want the championship runner-ups to play games against good teams earlier in the season? Wouldn't you want Boston to have a WNBA franchise? I hope it happens, because I think watching games and watching the Sun have that ownership and amount of like money support behind them would be really fun. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, to say I hope it happens is an understatement. Like, I'm dying for this to happen. I've been dying for a WNBA team in Boston my whole life, and truthfully, both from like a city standpoint of someone who loves the city, and I think the city would absolutely embrace a WNBA team. We've seen that in the 2 games that have been played at TD Garden, like just awesome atmospheres. Honestly, like last year's game rivaled the finals games, and I watched the Celtics hang a banner, and it compared to the atmosphere for a regular season game against the Los Angeles Sparks. So like, I think the city's ready for it. Obviously, for myself and my career, it would be really, really nice to be able to cover games in Boston instead of having to go to Mohegan Sun Arena to do so. That being said, like, that I try to take myself out of it when I'm thinking about these things. And even still, like, it just makes sense from a marketing standpoint. Like, it makes sense from a TV standpoint. Like, this is a city that has historically been one of the biggest sports markets in America. And so you saw, like, players are pretty open about it. Like, they want, like, the Connecticut players want this team to be in Boston. Like, they've talked about it. It's an open secret. So we'll see kind of how it plays out. But again, like, it's one thing for Boston to not have a team, but there to be a team in New England, and NBC Sports Boston, the channel that broadcasts Celtics games, they broadcast Sun games. Like, it's the same group right now. To have no WNBA team in New England at this moment, where the league is as popular as it's been, and it seems like it's just continuing to be on an upward trajectory, just feels like a massive oversight. So we'll see, but it does kind of, like, to me, begs the question of how much NBA control is going to be in the league, and like, is the vision for ultimately to have every NBA owner to own the WNBA team as well, and to have the NBA dictate everything the WNBA does, because that seems to be where things are headed, which has its advantages, but also kind of overlooks the fact that ownership groups like the Aces and the Storm have been really trailblazers in getting practice facilities and getting the best conditions for players, and they're not NBA owners, right? So Where do they fit in, and can the league force their hand to sell all of a sudden? Like, I don't know. It just starts to create a bunch of questions.
Completely agree. I mean, look no further than the last time the NBA owned most of the teams in the league. I mean, half of those teams ended up not making it very far. But Noa, thank you so much for coming on the pod. 47 minutes of Noa Dalzell. I appreciate it. For people in Minnesota that are listening to this, that for some reason and somehow don't know who you are, where can they find your work? What have you been working on? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, you can find me on social media, Twitter/X, just my name, Noa Dalzell. All my writing is on SB Nation and Celtics blog, and I have my own Celtics podcast called You Got Boston Podcast. But I'll be doing, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be putting out all of my awards and my explanations and the kind of the math and the justification behind every decision I made. So you can check out that series. I'll be posting all of those on social media.
Awesome. Thanks, Noa. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure.